All right, welcome. Today, we're cracking open the consultant's playbook on one of the biggest moves in corporate strategy, mergers and acquisitions. If you're heading into the business world, understanding why these corporate giants join forces is something you've absolutely got to know. So let's get right into it. So here's the game plan. We're going to start with the basics. Then we'll break down the three main M&A strategies: horizontal, vertical, and conglomerate. After that, we're going to hit a pretty sobering reality check, the massive failure rate. And then we'll wrap it all up with some real, actionable prep for that next big interview. All right, first things first, we need to nail down the fundamentals. What are we really talking about when we say M&A? And why is it such a big deal for how companies grow? I mean, think about it. Why does a company like Disney go out and spend billions of dollars to buy a studio like Pixar? And spoiler alert, it's about way more than just getting bigger. It's all about strategy, it's about market power, efficiency, and yeah, sometimes it's about pure survival. Okay, let's get one thing straight right off the bat. We throw around the term M&A all the time, but a true merger, where two companies come together as equals to form a totally new company, that's incredibly rare. You almost never see it. Most of the time, what we're really talking about are acquisitions, where one, usually bigger, company buys another one. And that's a key difference because it tells you who's really in the driver's seat from day one. Okay, let's jump into our first big strategy. Picture this. You've got two popular coffee shops right across the street from each other competing every day. A horizontal merger is when they decide to just become one giant cafe. Suddenly, they own the whole block. And that's the textbook definition. The two words to really focus on here are direct competitors. You're not just buying a business, you're taking a rival completely off the board. It's a pretty slick two-for-one move, right? You get bigger, and your world gets a lot less competitive. So why do it? What's the end game? Well, it really boils down to four things. One, you grab a much bigger piece of the pie. That's your market share. Two, you just plain eliminate a rival. That leads to number three, what we call economies of scale, which is just a fancy way of saying you can do things cheaper when you're bigger. And finally, when there's less competition, you get more control over your prices. Think about the classic Exxon and Mobil deal. It created an absolute giant and unlocked billions, with a B, in savings every single year. And you absolutely can't talk about this without mentioning the Disney and Pixar deal. This was genius. It wasn't just about getting rid of a competitor, it was about taking Pixar's unbelievable creative engine and plugging it into Disney's massive global marketing machine. The result? Just complete and total domination of the animation industry for years. Now you can imagine, when you start taking competitors off the board, the government gets very interested. And they have this special tool they use called the Herfindahl-Hirschman Index, or HHI. It's basically a fancy math problem to see how concentrated a market is getting. If a deal crosses those numbers you see there, it's a huge red flag for regulators. And check out that last part, the emerging concern, harm to labor markets. This is a newer, really big deal called monopsony, where a merger creates one dominant employer that can push wages down because, well, where else are you going to work? All right, on to strategy number two. Let's go back to our coffee shop. It's done competing with the shop across the street. Now, it decides to buy the farm that grows its coffee beans and the factory that makes its paper cups. It's about owning the entire process from the ground up. And that, right there, is the core idea of a vertical merger. You're not buying the guy next to you. You're buying the guy who sells you stuff or the guy you sell stuff to. The goal here isn't about crushing the competition. It's about controlling your own destiny and making everything more efficient. And this can go in two directions. If our coffee shop buys the bean farm, that's called backward integration. It's moving upstream, closer to the raw materials. But if it buys, say, the fleet of delivery trucks that brings coffee to offices, that's forward integration. It's moving downstream, closer to the final customer. You want to see a brilliant modern example? Look no further than Amazon buying Whole Foods. You have Amazon, this absolute master of the digital world, buying a huge network of physical stores. This move gave them control over the whole grocery experience, from the moment you click online to the moment you pick it up in a real store. They basically just erased the line between online shopping and walking into a store. So what's the argument for a vertical deal? Why would a regulator ever say yes to this? Well, it often comes down to this big economic idea: eliminating double marginalization. See, before the merger, the bean farm makes a profit, and then the coffee shop adds its own profit on top. The customer ends up paying for two markups. A vertical merger can get rid of one of those, which could actually lead to lower prices. Of course, the big risk regulators worry about is foreclosure. that our new powerful coffee company could just refuse to sell its beans to any other coffee shops, basically cutting off its rivals at the knees. And that brings us to our third and final play. Our coffee shop has bought its rival, it's bought its suppliers, and now it does something totally out of left field. It buys a software company. I mean, coffee and code? They have zero to do with each other. This move is all about spreading your bets. And that's what a conglomerate merger is all about, mashing together businesses that are in completely different fields. The logic here has nothing to do with market share or supply chains. This isn't an operations play, it's a Wall Street play, all about diversification and finance. So why on earth would you do this? First, it's about not putting all your eggs in one basket. If coffee sales are down, hey, maybe software sales are booming and it all evens out. Second, big, diverse companies often look safer to investors, so it's easier to get money. And third, you can create your own little internal bank, moving cash from your successful businesses to help the growing ones, all without having to ask outsiders for money. It's really about financial engineering more than anything else. But here's where it gets really interesting, especially on the world stage. In the US, these deals don't usually get a lot of hassle. Europe, totally different story. The classic case is GE and Honeywell. The US said, fine, but the EU blocked it. And the reason why was something called portfolio effects. They were afraid that GE, which was a giant in jet engines, would basically force airlines to also buy Honeywell's electronics, unfairly bundling products to crush the competition. This case literally created a huge divide in how the world thinks about these deals, and that's still a big deal today. Okay, so we've gone through the playbook. The strategies look great on paper, right? Well, now we need a serious reality check, because this next part is maybe the single most important thing you need to understand about M&A. Here it is. This is the number that should stop you in your tracks. Study after study shows that somewhere between 70 and 90% of mergers and acquisitions just fail. They fail to create any real value for the people who own the company. Let that sink in for a second. Most of these deals just don't work out. So what's going on here? Why the terrible track record? We'll take a look at this chart. It's not the strategy. It's not the financial models. The number one reason, by a long shot, is cultural misalignment. It's the people. It's trying to smash two different company cultures together with different ways of doing things, different values. The soft stuff, as they call it, turns out to be the hardest stuff of all. Okay, let's land the plane here and make this super practical for you. Because when you walk into that big consulting or finance interview, this is the stuff you absolutely need to have locked down. So when you're in that interview, here are the 3 takeaways you need to have in your back pocket. Number 1, the 3 core plays. Horizontal is for scale, vertical is for efficiency, and conglomerates is for diversification. Easy. Number 2, know the main risk for each one. HHI for horizontal, foreclosure for vertical, and those tricky portfolio effects for conglomerates. And number 3, and this is the point that will make you sound really smart, the strategy is the easy part. The real game is execution, because the biggest risk almost always is culture. Now you're armed and ready to tackle questions just like these. You can walk them through the 3 types, you can explain exactly why regulators get so nervous about horizontal deals, and you can have a really intelligent conversation about why companies keep making these huge, risky bets. Which leads us to the billion-dollar question. If most mergers are probably going to fail, is the risk ever truly worth the reward? Thanks for joining me.